What's up, DMV and everybody? It's your girl, Dr. T, and we are on Couture Conversations on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, where information is power. And as we say here on Couture Conversations, this is real talk tailored to you. And so we're always going to give you the truth, and we're always going to talk about matters that are important to you. And so with Mother's Day coming up, wanted to have a special Mother's Day episode, but tie it to benefits and leadership. So we're diving deep into what it really means to support mothers at work, in leadership, and through grief. So our guest today is a respected HR consultant who's helped many organizations design supportive, forward-thinking policies for working parents. And so she's here to talk more about how benefits have evolved, what's working now, and how mothers, especially those in leadership, can advocate for themselves. So Shauna Hook, welcome to Couture Conversations.
Hello. Thank you, Tamika. How are you?
I am good, 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 good. So, welcome to the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Tamika. So my name is Shauna Hook. I've been in HR for some time now, pretty much ever since I graduated from with my bachelor's. I've recently went back to school to get my master's, and now I'm currently getting my doctorate in organizational leadership and innovation because the learning never stops.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna have another doctor, Black female doctor, soon. I'm here for it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, tell us what inspired you to focus on total rewards, not just benefits, but total rewards, especially as they relate to women and families.
For me, it honestly happened after or once I became a mom,
Mhm.
and just seeing that I needed and wanted more support. And I'm a believer in the only way that, not the only way, but one of the ways that you can make the change is by getting involved in the process. And so I switched to, though I am experienced in a good vast majority of HR, I wanted to get more involved in the benefits to understand the impact on its people, the impact of benefits on people. And so that's kind of how I got there, quite honestly, becoming a mom and then giving birth to my son. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you've been listening to Couture Conversations with me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM. And this is Real Talk tailored to you. And we are speaking with Shauna Hook, an HR consultant who has expertise in total rewards. And so we are talking about benefits as it relates to moms who are particularly leaders in the workplace. So, what were some of the most common benefits or lack thereof for moms, let's say in the last like 20 years ago?
So I only had my child most recently, but
Mhm.
there wasn't a lot of paid leave out there. It was pretty much you're using your short-term disability and that's it, and you're coming right back to work. And that can be challenging. Because when you are giving birth, it is technically surgery, right? So you are either pushing or possibly you are having a cesarean, which requires the doctor to cut into your stomach, right? And that both ways, they're both a healing process. But then also, you know, unfortunately, because it's just short-term disability, once short-term disability is up, you have to come back into work unless you have a buildup of vacation and or sick time. So now you're being required to utilize your vacation or sick time to take care of your child. Um, And while I'm sure we all are very appreciative of that, I do believe that there should be separate buckets because there may be a time that you need to utilize your sick leave for something else, possibly when when your kid is, 2, and when they're 2, you need to take them to the doctor, or after they're just first born and you need to continue to utilize your sick leave to take your child to the doctor to get their shots and so on. So, yeah.
And so, how has paid leave, childcare support, mental health coverage, how has that evolved over the last 20 years?
Oh my goodness. So we are now seeing a lot more states with their own paid leave, which I think is great. Because before it's just FMLA. And to be clear, FMLA is unpaid leave. It's more about just job protection. But with the combination of the FMLA and the paid family leaves that the states are providing, it provides the parent, not just the mom, but the parent with the ability to go out on leave and feel confident that they can come back to their job. Not feel like they're being penalized for having a child and just wanting to be a parent. So that has come a long way for sure.
Yeah, that is awesome that the states are, providing their own leave, and it's paid at that, because, it's hard. You're already worrying about, taking care of this new life that you had, and you shouldn't have to also worry about, how you're going to get paid, or, do you have enough time to spend with the baby before you have to rush back to
Mhm.
work because there weren't any paid benefits. So I love that evolution. And so,
Yeah. I mean, and then if I can just take it back really quick, like even me
mhm,
when I had my son, there there was no state leave just yet. It was still in the process, at least where I was. It was still like rumbles about it, and it was maybe it's supposed to come out in like 2 years or something of the sort. But me, I just had short-term disability and whatever vacation I had built up, right? And I think the challenge with the vacation is that some organizations have it where you either use it or lose
mhm.
it, or you can only roll over a certain amount. And so unfortunately, that can impact your ability to stay at home with your child as well. So, kudos to the states implementing paid family leave practices or policies.
Absolutely. I know when I had my oldest, this is what, back in 2013, I was working in retail. This is before I became the HR expert that
Yes.
I am now, but stepping stones. But yeah, so I had to go back to work right after, the time was up for FMLA. I think I might have gotten uh 4 months, maybe 3 or 4 months. But then it was, the pressure of having to find childcare and having to,
Yeah.
and then going back and still not being fully healed, and those types of things. And so,
And
but then
let's not
with
talk
my,
about postpartum. Like
yes,
that may
postpartum
come
as
that
well.
may come about.
Exactly. Dealing with postpartum as well. And so, when I had my second in 2022, it was very different. It was very different.
Mm,
I stayed out for almost a year, really, with all the
mm,
paid benefits that were available to me. Now, of
mhm.
course, I'm in HR, so I know how to utilize them, but a lot
Yeah,
of people don't know their rights, or don't know that they have these benefits, these paid benefits that they can, stack back to back to back to back, so that you can, spend more time bonding with your child. Yeah. My
yeah.
daughter did not go to daycare until she was almost 1. So,
Oh my goodness. I had to put my kid into daycare at like 3 or 4 months, and it was extremely challenging for me.
yeah, yeah. So you've been listening to Couture Conversations with me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, where information is power. And we are talking to Shauna Hook. She is an HR consultant, and we are talking about how benefits 20 years ago was not really conducive to supporting working moms, and that how those benefits have evolved over time to be more helpful. And so, in addition to benefits, it's
Mhm.
also important to be able to ask for what it is that you need, and that's hard for some people. So, what role did advocacy and employee voice play in changing some of these systems?
Mm. Really think that I think it happened over time with just the generations, and how I feel like our generation and those that are coming up underneath us, we're a little bit more. We use our voice a lot more. We still have some barriers, but we use our voice a lot more, to advocate what we need. We notice a gap, and we're just like, okay, no, we need to fix this. And we try to come up with a solution. And I think one of the great ways to do that is anchor some of your requests to business outcomes, because if you know your organizations speak business. They speak people too, but they speak business as well. And so if you can do that, you can catch your leadership's attention. You know what I mean?
No, that's true, right? You have to it's all about the bottom line, right?
Mhm.
So it's like happy employee, more productive, right?
Yeah,
More money for
absolutely.
you, right?
Yep.
That's a good point. And so, where do you think the biggest leaps have been made? And where do we still need to have work, and where are we still behind with regards to benefits for working moms?
Honestly, I think the biggest leap has been the states providing paid family leave, as at least some states, right? I think that's one of the biggest leaps. And I think the other leap is that there are organizations now that are giving anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks of paid leave, which I think is awesome. And as in that is in combination with your short-term disability. And that's not requiring you to utilize your vacation or sick time. They're all separate buckets. I think an area of opportunity would be to implement formal phase back programs, right? So some organizations do it informally, and the challenge with doing it informally is that every employee may not have or receive the same benefits as the other person. So unintentionally, you might be creating inequities, right? So I
Mhm.
do think that there's an opportunity for organizations to create phase back programs for moms. You can determine what that looks like. Maybe you're coming back part time. Maybe you're working kind of hybrid. If your organization's fully, in person, maybe you're just doing hybrid a couple of days out of the week. Maybe Monday and Wednesday you're working from home, but the other days you're in the office, and that can create or relieve a lot of stress for parents. And not to mention also help with them financially for sure, right? Because now I don't have to have maybe I may not have to have my kid in daycare the whole entire week.
Right, right. No, that's amazing. And because of the pandemic, that has afforded a lot of organizations to have those, hybrid schedules. And so
Mhm.
it's really helpful for working moms, particularly in leadership positions. I know in my leadership role, there's been times I've got on calls with my sick baby, like in one arm,
Yeah.
I'm off camera, but unapologetically, and
Hmm.
coworkers understand because you're saying, hey, I'm still productive, I'm still doing the work, but I got to take care of my sick kid at the same time. So I think there's a lot more understanding and compassion now for
Hmm.
working moms. And so we have come a long way. And so you've been listening to me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM. And this is Couture Conversations, where we have real talk tailored to you. And so we've been talking with Shauna Hook, an HR consultant who has expertise in total rewards or benefits as it relates to working moms and or moms in leadership, and how they can advocate for themselves, or how they can benefit from having improved benefits, improved from what was, done 20 years ago to now. And so now, we talked a little bit about, what was lacking back in the day. Let's talk about what's working now. So, what are the top three benefits you believe every company should offer for working mothers?
Ooh, I think there are so many. Um, but I wouldn't say ERGs, which are employee resource groups, are necessarily a benefit, but they are programs that I think can benefit moms, right? Because it creates a community, and ideally a brave space for parents to share their thoughts and concerns. Um, and hopefully they can just feel open about what it is that they're going through with other parents, and they can just share thoughts amongst each other. I think another place that we should continue to grow again is around parental leave, just ensuring that it's not just about mothers but parents in general, even adopted parents. I think we have to recognize that family dynamics are changing. That looks different now. So we need to make sure that we are adhering to that. When you're thinking about benefits in general, ensuring that your employee benefits allows for um, your partner to join, regardless of the type of relationship that you have with them, allowing your partners to join or be able to receive some of your employee benefits itself, as well. So that's where I think things should continue to go. And I know some people may think, well, isn't that already happening? No, you'll be surprised that
Right.
there are some organizations that just don't allow, like, you have to be married. We don't, there's um, no dependent type of benefits allowed.
Hmm.
So long as we continue to work in that direction where you allow dependents to come, they don't necessarily have to be married. They are in a partnership. As long as we continue to do that, I think we are off to a great start.
That's a really great point. Those are really great points that you raised, Shauna, in terms of, the family dynamic has changed a lot in the last 20 years. And, I remember, when I first started out in HR in like 2016, initially for open enrollment, we didn't have the domestic partner option. But then
Mm-hmm.
the next year, we did have the domestic partner option. And so that was great because then, I could put my partner on my benefits. I wasn't married
Yeah.
then. So I love that. And then, for the adoptive families, even for fathers, they have, parental leave for fathers as well. And so, yes, we have come a long way. And unfortunately, there are some organizations that are behind and need to catch up
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to lose good people if they don't have the support that they need, especially, in this employment market now. So,
Yeah, that's true. But I think that to the organizations that can't do it, right? It has to do with the fact that maybe their budget doesn't allow for it. It's not that
mhm,
they don't acknowledge it, but maybe their budget just doesn't allow for it at this moment. So maybe they're thinking of creative ways to allow you to
mhm.
still be able to or to still recognize the person as an individual and not just as a worker. So I think that's something to also just really put out there as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Sometimes they don't have the dollars,
Yeah.
but like you said, they can think outside the box. And so have you seen any innovative or out of the box benefits that have really impressed you?
Um, Impressed me, I would say that I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that there were some nonprofits that allowed about 24 weeks of paid family leave.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty out of the box.
Mhm.
Because that's just really unheard of, quite honestly. Um, Outside of that, I mean, there again, I think when I do see like a phase program, I'm actually surprised because again, a lot of organizations don't do that. It's kind of like, oh, just come on back to work and regular schedule, right back to it. I used to think that being able to just work from home all day, all the time was innovative. But now we're in a place where everyone's working from home, right?
Mhm.
Pretty much. So outside of those things, not really. I think there are a lot of changes that are on the way to come. So I think people are maybe they're treading lightly, possibly, or just trying to make sure they have all their ducks in a row
Mhm.
before making too many I guess permanent changes as well.
Right. Those are all great points, and I love that you lifted up that even with budgetary restrictions, there are employers who are extending the paid leave time and giving a phased in approach for parents or moms coming back into the office. And so those are really great things that you may not think it's a big deal, but it really is.
Mhm.
It really does help out. And so you've been listening to me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM. And this is Couture Conversations, real talk tailored to you. And we are having real talk with Shauna Hook, our HR consultant, an expert in total rewards and benefits. And since Mother's Day is coming up, this episode is really near and dear to me because it is able to blend not only IO psychology and the things that I love in HR, but also be able to blend in how that relates to working moms. And so we've been talking about the benefits back in the day and compared to today and how they've evolved and have become more lenient for working moms. We've talked about, some of the innovative things that organizations with a low budget can do, such as, offering a little more paid time, offering that phased in approach to come back. And so now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about the grief. That while
Mm.
the Mother's Day is a celebration for many, there's also people who are grieving for it could be a mom who lost a child or their own mother. And so we want to hold space for that. So, Shauna, how can HR departments and leaders be mindful of grief around Mother's Day?
That is a great question. So I would say, or my suggestion would be, if you are in a space where you have an internal intranet, or you're still sending out like weekly newsletters or something of the sort, and you're doing an ode to mothers in that same message, list out the ways that your organizations support mothers, right? Even if it's from like your employee resources, where you can get I would say a coach, but a therapist may be available for you to speak, is already part of your benefits. So make sure that you provide that specific link. But I think you hinted on this a little bit. Grief can happen at any point and for any reason. And so I think employers can also see about getting a coach or someone that can speak to grief more fluently, and maybe make that part of some of your trainings. Maybe invest in mental health aid support as well. So I think those
Mhm.
are some of the things that you can do.
Yeah, no, those are great. Great ideas. And, you mentioned something, that grief can happen at any time, right? And so,
Mhm.
how can workplaces create a space for, quiet grief without forcing people to move on too quickly, right? There's so many stages of grief, and, might be fine 1 minute, but, you're not the next. So what can organizations do to create that space for those grieving?
I think it has to do with how you are equipping your managers to have those type of conversations as well. I think that's very important, um, because that requires you to be just a little bit vulnerable, and it requires you to bring a little bit more of yourself to work as well. So I
Mhm.
think if you can have open and honest conversations with your manager, I think that is one of the things that you should do. So employers should definitely train their managers on how to have um, these conversations. And it can even be done through your regular training. Maybe it's not a specific training just for about grief specifically, but when we're talking about maybe DEI, for as an example, there are certain languages or words that you want to, stay away from. So consider that, have that same consideration when we are discussing grief. So just being cognizant of that.
Yeah, no, I love that, like having that training for managers. And one thing I will say about my organization is that, we are, rolling out trauma informed coaching,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
starting with the directors, and leadership. And it's eventually going to be, taught to everyone. Everybody's going to be trained on that. But it's so important because, aside from the mothers who may have lost a child or their own mother, just in general, there are a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of trauma. And so I,
Mhm.
shout out to EPG for,
Mhm.
being innovative enough to be able to, say we acknowledge the whole person. And so we're going to train up all of our staff to be able to um, be more sensitive with regards to trauma informed coaching or
Yeah.
conversations.
Oh
So
my
that
goodness, that is great. That is awesome. I don't think many organizations are doing it, and if they are doing it, it's kind of passive, right? It's not fully intentional. And so the fact that you have your leadership bought in to that, I think is a big deal. Um, but even with the trauma informed leadership, I think it's still important for you to, or organizations, to not only do that training once, right? To do it over and over again, because I would say recency theory is what's popping in my head, right? So you'll talk about trauma informed leadership or anything for that during that one training. And the concepts and everything may stick with you for a little bit, but you can easily slide back into your old behavior because we're human. So you need to ensure that we're continuously having those type of trainings all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure my organization is on top of it with, making sure that once everybody's trained up, then we'll have quarterly trainings. We do that now with our just general coaching training
Mm-hmm.
that we've received, and we get refreshers, every quarter. So yes, definitely a great point that you made, Shauna. And so you've been listening to Couture Conversations with me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM. 95.9 FM. And this has been Real Talk tailored to you. And because Mother's Day is coming up, we wanted to have a special episode to discuss mothers working in leadership, or mothers being able to have that work-life integration, and how employers can support that. We talked about, the difference between the benefits that moms had, 20 years ago versus the benefits that, moms have now. And we just talked about grief. I think that's something that, some people don't always think about, but, there's moms who've lost children or their own
Mhm.
mothers. And so, we're holding space for that here on Couture Conversations. And so, um, Shauna, what advice would you give to mothers who've lost a child and who are trying to navigate work and emotions during this time?
Ooh, I think community is the
Mm,
number one thing. You cannot do this alone. Like, it's very important for you to have partnerships. Um, so identify those folks within your community that you believe that you can lean on, that's going to help stand you up, accountability partners, all of that good stuff.
hmm.
And quite honestly, I think sometimes we don't even know that we are grieving, but it's happening, right? So take time to sit with yourself. You don't have to do a whole hour or anything like that, but create space in the morning for you to take like 5 minutes to just breathe deeply. Um, and then identify what is coming up for you in that moment and create a plan on how you're going to address that. And in that space, those are the times where your community would be extremely helpful. Tap your friend on the shoulder. Tap your friend on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I just need to have a quick conversation," or "Hey, I just need a a quick cry, a quick cry out."
Yep.
Well, quite
Yep.
honestly, because sometimes that's all you need.
Hmm.
So those are one of the ways that I would say to try to do your best to manage grief. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a therapist. So this is just my opinion, some of the things that have worked for me. Let me just be clear, clear
Yep.
on that. Definitely seek guidance. Go ahead and speak to a therapist. Um, and I feel like all of that is just change in general, right? So for me, excuse me, for me, I would say I definitely have had grief, and in those times I actually sought out a therapist. Um and it was very helpful, but in that I also talked about a lot of other things, right? Including becoming a mom, becoming a wife, and still trying to support myself, because I can grieve the fact that, oh, I'm no longer just worried about myself. I'm now worried about this new human being, right?
Hmm.
So grief is going to look different every time. You're grieving the person that you once were, because now you've turned into this new individual. So definitely seek out a therapist, if you feel like you need it, because they can help you through those changes.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, and even grief support. I recently lost my dad in February, and so, therapy wasn't enough. So now it's like, let me go to a grief counseling group so that they can help me cope with the feelings that I'm feeling, or help me to
Mhm.
be able to, in my mind, it seems difficult to try to keep myself together while still being a mom, a wife, an employee. And so, just seeking out help is key, building that
Yes.
community, as you said, Shauna, so that you're not in it alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. So you've been listening to Couture Conversations with me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, where information is power. And we've been talking to Shauna Hook, an HR consultant who is an expert in total rewards and benefits. And we've been talking about how benefits have changed over the last 20 years to support women, particularly women in leadership, with work. And so, we've seen that there has been an evolution in the sense that women are getting longer time off, they're being able to be phased back into work, and really, getting the support that we didn't necessarily see. Even we talked about the states offering paid leave, so that mothers don't have to worry about, trying to care for their little ones, but worried about money at the same time. And so um, those were some great those were some great things that have evolved for moms. And so another thing we touched on was grief. A lot of times we just think about Mother's Day and, the mother figures or, those that are here, but there are moms who've lost children or their own mom. And so, we're holding space for them. And basically our expert Shauna Hook said, seek community. That's what's going to help you. Grief can happen at any time. So, talk to a therapist or a grief counselor, or organizations can provide, that benefit as well to be able to help those grieving moms through the process. And so now want to get a little bit more practical. And so for the moms listening, especially those in leadership, what does real life integration look like? And I notice I didn't say balance because it's not.
No, it is not a
It's not a
thing.
balance.
It's
It's not. It's
not
not.
a
It's a myth.
thing. Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Yes. So integration. So Shauna, what's the difference between work-life balance and work-life integration?
Yeah, so the idea of work-life balance, is the idea that work and personal life are separate domains, and there needs to be some type of equilibrium, right? And then when you think about work-life integration, it's more about life and work being interconnected parts, kind of like of a whole, aiming to blend them, able to blend the ability to blend work and life together in a way that
Mhm.
aligns with personal values and needs. Now, I
Mhm.
I am more in line with work-life harmony, which I feel
Mhm.
like is a thing that people are kind of like leaning towards. But it is work-life harmony for me is where work and personal life really support each other, kind of like integration. Integration, sorry, work-life integration, but it feels a little bit more meaningful, fulfilling, and the most important thing, sustainable. I
Mhm.
think that's key here, right? And ideally, there will be less tension or and I guess kind of like strict boundaries. However, I'm also a proponent of boundaries as well in the workplace, because that is also how I can do self care for me. Being a mom and having a son, I need to make sure I create space for him to come to me, for me to show up for him as well. So I'll just give you an example. For me, I'm currently in school, and I'm also working. But there are times where I'm doing my homework, and my son might say, "Hey, mom, can you not do schoolwork right now? Can you spend time with me?" And I do that. But then there are also other times where I might be reading a book for school, and my son jumps on the couch, grabs his book, and starts reading as well. You see what
Mhm.
I'm saying? So though we are not necessarily talking to each other, we are both in a space and sitting together, and it feels like we are spending time with each other, and he enjoys that.
I love that. I love that. So you talked a little bit about boundaries. So what strategies or boundary setting techniques do you recommend to help moms feel more in control of their time?
Yeah. So use your calendar for
Mhm.
sure, but also if you have a partner, definitely be in communication with them all the time, and be your own self advocate and let others know what it is that you may need, and for support. And so I am a person where I feel like my husband and I have pretty decent communication, and so I'll let him know that I may need a little time in the morning to do A, B, and or C, right? And then that just means that he is primary in that space in that moment. But I also recognize that everyone doesn't have a partner. And so you might be a mom who just might be doing this on your own, and I definitely understand the challenges that you may be facing in that time. And so during those moments, I would say that when your child is at school, and I know that you're working, but if you can create time on your calendar in between your meetings to have 15 minutes of breathing space, do so. Like, do that because that matters. If there are times where you might be listening to, I don't know, maybe a webinar and you can exercise at the same time, do that. Maybe
Mm.
do that because that's also self care. But you're also still pretty active in the workspace. So that's, to me, that's kind of like, that's the harmony for me. But I think the important thing about whether you're doing work life balance, work life harmony, or work life integration, it's you need to ensure that your organization is aligned with that as well, because these things cannot exist without leadership buy-in either.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And so, Shauna, how can mothers advocate for better support without fear of being perceived as less committed, or not as hard of a worker as this person over here who doesn't have children?
Mm. I think, again, I think we kind of stated this a little bit at the beginning, which is kind of anchoring your request or your needs to a business outcome. So, for example, instead of saying I need flexible hours because my childcare is hard right now, you can say, hey, can we do a trial of, me having flexible hours? And if it doesn't work out, we could stop do this we could stop doing it, but can we do a trial run of it, and just say I would like to pilot a schedule that ensures I meet deadlines and still supportive of my team. So that's one thing that I would say is the anchoring request to business outcomes. I think the other way is showing, if your organization does not have an ERG for moms or parents with children, I think that is one of the ways, because ERGs are groups, but they are also solution oriented groups, because you have so many different perspectives within one space. And if, as a collective, there we all see a challenge, as a collective we can also come up with a solution and then present it, right?
Mm.
And so within those ERG groups, you probably also have sponsors. Your sponsor is someone who's within the leadership, and they can help you tailor your solution or your conversation to present to the wider leadership team as well.
No, those are excellent points. And I love the way you phrased it, right? It's not just coming in like, I need da 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 da. Old me would have said, I need whatever. Now that I am a leader, I think more strategically in terms of how to make a win-win for everyone. So I love that. And so you've been listening to Couture Conversations with me, Dr. T, on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, where information is power. And we are keeping you informed today with our special guest, Shauna Hook. She's an HR consultant and expert in total rewards and benefits. And with Mother's Day coming up, we wanted to talk a little bit about how mothers can get what it is that they need with benefits or with their employers, so that there's a little bit more of a balance with regards to them still being able to be there for their children. And so we've talked about how benefits have evolved over time. And 20 years ago we didn't have parental leave or domestic partner benefits and things like that. Now we do. It's more inclusive. We've talked about how grieving moms, can handle this time, during Mother's Day, whether they've lost their own child or their own mother. And so we held space for that because, it's important to be able to build community when you're going through grief, or when you're having a difficult time trying to navigate working and your emotions. And so one of the things that our expert Shauna Hook said was, with the employee resource groups, or ERGs, you can sign up for that and maybe find a grief counselor or get a therapist, or lean on a trusted friend, and just have a, what'd you say, Shauna, a quick cry.
Yes.
And so these are things that, grieving moms can do as well. And so lastly, we talked about work-life integration and self-advocacy, or as Shauna calls it, work-life harmony, because that includes, your whole self and your self-care. And so she gave some really great practical tips for what moms can do to have that work-life harmony, in terms of, working out, being on a treadmill while you're doing your work, or, if you're doing your work and your child, can sit right next to you and they have their laptop too. I know me and my 2-year-old, we do that all the time. And so, and also being able to advocate in terms of what's the best language. How should you frame, the conversation when you talk to leadership about your needs as a mom? And so Shauna provided some great advice in terms of, tying it to performance outcomes, tying it to, the organization's bottom line, so that it's a win-win for everyone. And so now, oh, it's been such an insightful conversation, Shauna. I really enjoyed having you on. And so, as we wrap, I'd love for you to leave us with one message you want every working mom to hold on to this Mother's Day.
Ooh. Ooh, why we gotta go so deep?
Girl, real talk tailored to you. You already know. We gonna keep it real on Couture Conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. um self-care is real. Self-care is needed. Um Create space for you to do that. Do something that you wouldn't normally do for yourself. Um be gentle and kind with yourself. Um and use your voice. I feel like these are times where our moms, parents, our voices are being suppressed. Um, Use your voice. Speak for what it is that you need, what you desire. Because if you don't, then you'll never even know if it could have been a possibility.
I love that. And that reminds me of something, I say a lot. My late great Aunt Lou used to tell me growing up, never be afraid to ask for what you want. And so, I've evolved it now because I'm not asking, I'm commanding. So
Yes.
never be
Yeah.
afraid to command
Okay. Snap the
what you
fingers.
want. Right. So evolve my Aunt Lou's saying. And so I think that's a really important point that you made. Like you have to be your own self-advocate. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Shauna, for joining us on Couture Conversations. Is there any way that the folks can reach out to you for if they have need advice or guidance or anything like that?
I mean, sure. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn as Shauna Hook, and I'm happy to be in community with you that way. And hopefully, Tamika can have me on again, where we're talking about my doctorate program and my
Okay.
dissertation, and
Okay.
all the
All
good
right.
stuff.
Commanding what you want. All right, girl. She
Yes,
plugged
I had
it.
to advocate
Stamped
now.
it. You had to advocate for yourself. So thank you so much. And so to all of the moms listening, you are doing more than enough. You are worthy of support. You are worthy of respect. You are worthy of rest. We see you. We honor you and we're here for you, which is why we hold this space for you. And so we know that we want our voices to be heard. And so, you know, we are advocating for you moms. So thank you so much for listening. This has been Couture Conversations with Real Talk tailored to you. I'm Dr. Tamika S. Hood and wanted to wish all the moms a happy Mother's Day. Oh.